If we want Maiden Day to be exciting rather than terrifying, we have to have it set up right before we take it to the field. Little extra effort and paying attention to detail can mean taking a whole plane home, just like we brought it to the field. The instructions usually give us a good idea of where all the equipment is to be installed. The kit's manufacturers have a vested interest in us winding up with a good flying airplane. Following their recommendations on where the equipment goes can make a big deal when it comes time to set the CG in this plane. Installing servos with the output shaft in the right orientation can prevent conflicts. With the output shaft in the right orientation, setting up the linkages can be much easier as well. Get the orientation of the servo wrong, and linkages included with the kit may not fit. This linkage not only fits, it has plenty of adjustment left on the threads. I've seen servos installed backwards, and the linkages had to be adjusted so far that they're just about ready to fall apart. We always want to start with the servo arms 90 degrees to the servo body with the sub-trims and everything at 0. Very often when we have more than one arm, reversing it can have one of them will be exactly 90 degrees to the body. If we get the servo arm 90 degrees to the body, setting travels and other things later is going to be much easier. Then we can use the linkage adjustments to zero out the control surfaces. Taking the time to get everything zeroed out mechanically makes trim flights a lot less scary. With everything squared mechanically, getting equal travel in both directions on all of our control surfaces is much easier. I tape rods to things like the elevators so I can match their movements. Having the rods extend out a ways exaggerates the movement. It makes it much more precise when setting this up. My Spectrum radios have a balance adjustment. That lets us adjust individual elevators to match the other one at various points through their travel. Making sure that one half of the elevator isn't getting ahead or lagging behind the other one makes the plane track better. When matching up the ailerons, I use a simple gauge like this that just clips onto the aileron. To make it easier to read from either side, I mark the travel that I want on the back of this. Then I can make sure I'm getting the same travel when I'm looking at it from either side of the plane. While setting up my planes, I make these wire flags. Using these simple labels, make sure that I get the right aileron plugged into the right extension. I also group some of the wires just to make sure that things aren't flopping around inside the fuselage where they could get caught on a servo or something. We don't need something like the rudder accidentally unplugging an aileron. I also pay attention to how I route my wires so we can use some of the facilities in the fuselage itself to keep them from getting tangled up in things. And last, after everything else is installed and adjusted, is I check the CG. If we did everything else right, most of the time I can get away with just moving the batteries to get the CG right. Adding lead should always be a last resort. If you're new to RC flying, you're going to find out that spending some time to get the setup right can leave a lot of the terror back on the bench. We want flying our planes to be fun, not heart-stopping or expensive.